My pleasure to be with you, Father Kedjierski. You are currently serving as the Executive Director of the Secretariat of Ecumenical and Religious Affairs for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. So you are in charge of the dialogue, or to shape the dialogue from inside and for outside. And really, I don't know which of them has more difficulties, because from my Jewish perspective, we as Jews have a lot of inner problems in order to develop a dialogue between the streams, the major streams, the Orthodox, Reform, conservative movements. Since June 2017, you have served as rector president of the Seminary of the Immaculate Conception in Huntington, in New York. And former, you served as vice rector and director of diaconate formation. So you have two qualities. From one side, you are a pedagogue, you are a teacher, and you form teachers. You have an expertise on this theme. And from others, the other side is you are shaping, you are forming the development of dialogues with other creeds, with other Christian denominations. How do you understand what should be a real dialogue?
That is a wonderful question to start us off. And first, let me just say what an honor it is to be able to be with you, Rabbi, and to be able to spend this time, and how much I admire all of your work that you've done through the years, especially in Buenos Aires. What is dialogue? Oh, that is such an important question. I think first and foremost, it is about listening. That is a central element, to be able to listen to the other, to try to understand where the other is coming from in a way that is respectful. In a sense, I think about, in particular, the theologian David Tracy, who writes about dialogue and says part of it is sort of putting yourself to the side and allowing yourself to really be in the shoes of the other, to understand the perspective of the other, while not forgetting who you are, at the same time listening with ears that say, I'm going to put my presumptions aside, but instead I'm going to really try to understand where the other is coming from. And as we listen to the other, we will invariably find areas of convergence. And in getting to know the other in dialogue, we come to the point, hopefully, where we are able to establish a language whereby we are able to articulate some of those convergences, and come to points of agreement, and even perhaps at times the capacity to commit to working together to better our world. But foundational to dialogue, I think that what underlies all of dialogue is friendship. Friendship is a key ingredient. Getting to know each other first as fellow human beings, and actually coming to appreciate each other. One of the individuals that I remember meeting back when I'm on Long Island, it's a fellow by the name of Werner Reich, who was a survivor of the Holocaust. And I remember at one point, he made a point, he said, dialogue works when you start to look at the other, and instead of saying, oh, there is a Muslim fellow, there is a Jewish fellow, there is a Presbyterian fellow, you start to look at them and first remember their names. You know, first and foremost, recognize who they are as human beings. So hopefully that helps a little bit with the question.
No, it's a good answer. This this answer remind me that regarding your commentaries about David Tracy, what he said about dialogue, to put yourself in the shoes of the other, this is a Bergoglio's phrase, the Pope's phrase when we met in Buenos Aires before he became Pope. So he expressed very often that dialogue means to put yourself in the shoes of the other. And the second point, which is very important, is the point of language. Because you have to elaborate the language with the other. The meaning of the words, the nuances of the words are a table is a table, but one can understand this word symbolizing A, and another one can understand the word table. It can relate the word table with other things, and so you have to try to build with the other a common language. That's correct. And regarding friendship, okay, I am speaking from my greatest experience of interfaith dialogue, which I got with Pope Francis, and really a dialogue conducts to friendships. He is a very coherent person, and what he thinks is what he does, and really he expressed me in things of life. On so many occasions, he extended to me a helping hand, but on personal things, not merely to meet with the other in order to, okay, let us do something, let us write a book together, let us perform a television program together, but no. I dared on certain occasion, I thought, okay, I need this. Maybe, okay, he is the Pope, but maybe he is my friend, that he can help me on that.
Yeah.
For instance, this is not a secret, because the authorities of immigration here, I asked here, I did here all the procedures in order to get a green card. Yeah, so I can stay here in the United States and develop all my works here. So I dare to ask from him, could you please prepare a letter for my lawyer told me, okay, you are a good friend of the Pope. Okay, can you ask from him? And the first time that I met him in Rome, oh, okay, here you have my letter. He is the Pope, but he is the friend. And this is the highest level of dialogue. How can we, or what should we do in order to develop, because this is our great challenge, the idea of dialogue between congregations, different congregations, Jewish, Muslim congregations, and Catholic congregations and parish. I did something like that in the Buenos Aires of, let's say, the beginning of the 70s. But the two, when I began serving as a rabbi, but the former rabbi of my congregation of then, and the father of the parish, who was in charge of of those plays, they developed really a friendship. And I received as a heritage to go ahead with this friendship and with this, the activities between my congregation and the parish. But what can we do? What should we do? Talking at large, because not specifically, I am talking from my Jewish Catholic experience, but let us talk at large. What should we do?
Yeah, that is, to me, this question is a critical question in this day and age. It is so important because, unfortunately, as you know, we are dealing with a day and age in which people have a lot of fear. I think that the pandemic in particular has heightened fear and has caused people to put up boundaries where they weren't before. Even to be in the same room can be intimidating and frightening for people. But honestly, my opinion is very much so the future of interreligious dialogue has to be relational and has to highlight the relational. And I think it starts off with a willingness to cross boundaries that have been set up between us. Sometimes these boundaries are centuries old. And so it can be quite a risk to go out there and to encounter the other. But I believe it's interesting as we look in this day and age, I believe we people of faith across religious boundaries have something so important to offer to the world today. We have to offer the hope that comes from being human together. And I think that's where it starts off, very simply being human to each other, avoiding, that Buber's I-it type relationship, but really the I-thou of just decency and extreme respect for each other. I think about last week we had a meeting of our dialogue sort of organizers for our National Council of Synagogues dialogue, and Rabbi David Strauss, who I believe you know, was there. And his first question was to Father Dennis McManus, how are your siblings doing? Because he currently has 3 siblings who are unfortunately quite ill. But that was before anything else. We were going to get into the business. His first question, though, was this, about the health of his relatives. And it's just a sign. There is the humanness, and that always has to take priority. Sadly, I think we're in a day and age where technology becomes so important, and we deal with machines a lot, and sometimes we might have the temptation to deal with others as machines as opposed to human beings. And I think Pope Francis writes a bit about this in Fratelli Tutti, the idea of we can, and even Evangelium Gaudium, the idea of that we can moderate our relationships via screens, as much as we are blessed with this mechanism that we can speak today, but we start off with the human dimension first and foremost. And so crossing those boundaries, and in terms of practically encouraging our people, I think there are a few things that we can do. First and foremost, to try to get our congregations to come together. But I think it starts off with the clergy or the leaders of the communities. What's interesting is, different religious traditions have different modes of leadership, different styles. Some might not even have, say, a set leader, but might have a few organized, or even elected individuals who might serve for a term. But to try to do the best you can to have the leaders of the community come together first. There are many clergy associations throughout the United States where really that's the model first and foremost. And when one congregation has a concern, like let us say, sadly, you might have a house of worship that suffers damage, maybe a fire or something of that nature. Another congregation comes in and says, we would like to offer you hospitality. Those sorts of things are terrific. And then the clergy together can discern different projects. Like one of the things I remember being involved with was in a parish I was in. The children from Hebrew school visited the church and had a tour, and then the children in our catechism class visited the synagogue and got to meet the rabbi, and it was just tremendous. So working with the young people too, and even sometimes it doesn't have to be something very, very organized and structured, but with young people, you get them from our congregations playing basketball together and you make sure you divide it up, that the team is not, you know, different religious traditions against each other, but you sort of mix them. You make sure you mix them, and you have them have that opportunity to work together. And then to even there are different activities that can really be very enlightening for people in terms of the opportunity for faith sharing, for mutual scripture study. Those areas too, you know, if you can get congregations together and people who are interested, it can sometimes be very profound for people to learn the depths of other religious traditions. You know, sometimes, unfortunately, I think we fall into the trap of just encapsulating the other in a sound bite. Oh, well, they believe this, and those people believe that. You know, well, Catholics don't eat meat on Friday, and that's who they are. Well, actually, it's a little more complicated, you know, and to just be open to the complexity of the other, and to encourage that in our congregations, I think it is helpful too. So those are just a few thoughts.
Well, now about something about the relationship between Christians and Jews. Now we are undergoing a difficult time, because we are seeing how anti-Semitism is rising again. And sometimes we can see even people from the church talking about anti-Semitism and expressing themselves, oh, no, we are not anti-Semites. We are anti-Israel. We are expressing ourselves against the racist state of Israel. What is possible to do with such expressions that sometimes we can hear from certain people from the church talking or expressing themselves in this way? What it's possible to do? Because for me, it's very clear. Anti-Zionism in the way that it's used is another form of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
It's very simple. You can see people, not the let's say the leaders, but lay people, simple people, who are identifying themselves with these ideas. They go and kill Jews in a synagogue without asking them, are you Zionist or not Zionist? They are relating immediately each Jew with the state of Israel. But what can we say about that? What can we do about that?
It's an excellent question. And indeed, it is heartbreaking to see the rise in anti-Semitism, the violence that has taken place. I think about Poway, I think about Pittsburgh, and it's so sad, because there might have been some of us who were naive and thought, you know, well, we did that. And anti-Semitism, it's not as much a concern, but then these horrible tragedies happen. And people woke up and realized, no, this is very much so a reality. We must always be vigilant about the particular brand of hatred that is anti-Semitism. That is just so heartbreaking. And the church must constantly repeat a repudiation of any form of anti-Semitism, and sadly admit at times we have failed, you know, the teaching of contempt, that we have to repair the damage. And unfortunately, you know, that's a complicated task. You think about Jules Isaac going to John the 23rd, and he said it right. He said, I think there's hope, but it's going to take time, because some of these attitudes are ingrained in people. But it's tragic, you know, sort of. The big thing, I think, is to try to help people to see the big picture to help people to understand what Israel is about, how for many, we understand Israel needs to be there for Jewish survival. You need to have a place of refuge because the hatred has been so prevalent. And to get people to understand that, to get people to understand the complexity of the Jewish community, how there are many perspectives, there are many voices, and not to dismiss people. I think that's one of the most hurtful things that I've seen for people in so many different contexts, of being labeled and misunderstood and dismissed. That I think is a major goal of dialogue, to help people to recognize others as individual human beings, and that things are a lot more complicated. The state of affairs in Israel is different from the state of affairs here in the United States. And we have to recognize that, and we have to look at the Middle East and see, there's what country in the Middle East has greater religious freedom, when you think about it, than Israel. But unfortunately, sometimes people hear narratives that are incorrect, and they jump to these conclusions that are very tragic and can lead to tragic results. But I think we need to be constant. And in the life of the church, I would like to think that if there are individuals from pulpits who are saying things they shouldn't, that their bishops would come forward. I'm happy to say, even on our USCCB website, we have amassed a collection of different statements that bishops in our country have issued after anti-Semitic incidents, or even just in response to perhaps things going on in their own diocese. They've issued statements at times about anti-Semitism, really trying their best. And even our U.S. bishops this past March approved a plan to really try to address anti-Semitism. But the thing is, for we Catholics, we've said in numerous documents, especially our ecumenical documents, how for us it really needs to start with us. First, what are our attitudes? What are things that we are doing that perhaps could promote these very sad actions and views? So one of the things we're doing is we're looking at our seminary curriculum. We're looking at our even our, say, my opinion is, why start with the seminary? Why don't we start with our grammar schools? Why don't we start with young children? And see what can we do to imbue our curriculum with an accurate sense of who the Jewish community is, so that we can start this right at the very beginning. So that's one of the things, to review our texts, to look at, say, our hymns and things of that nature, and anything that might be a dangling hang-on from the past, that we've repudiated. Sometimes things stay along that you if you're not attentive to, you realize, okay, we have to look at that.
That's true. The key to resolve a lot of our problems is, as you said, as you stress, education. To transmit a very clear message. And you said some sentences that with great humility, I would say, they are very, very correct. They are reflecting a truth. For instance, to judge Israel's situation in the Middle East, and I say the Middle East in order to emphasize the context, the geographical and political context in which Israel, the state of Israel, is, with the eyes of a United States reality. You must take into account what is going on there, what's the mentality. And the other point is to introduce in the curricula of the seminaries and of all the religious institutions, rabbinical seminaries, mahkames, the importance of the value of the word, because all places where the word, where there is an absence of the word, there the one who talks are the guns.
Mm-hmm.
Word is the best answer. Word is the best answer against the bullets. Now, how do you see the relationship, the dialogical relationship between the church and the Muslim world here in the United States and in general in the world, taking into account the great work that Pope Francis developed with Al-Tayeb, the head of the Sunnis in the world, in the University Al-Azhar in Egypt, and the great achievement that both of them got in signing in Abu Dhabi the document of fraternity. What's your conception? What's your view on that?
Mm-hmm. I think the view is very positive. We've come such a long way, and even to look at the continued influence of Muslim voices in, say, Pope Francis's encyclical Fratelli Tutti, and to just think that a pope would draw from Muslim sources to write an encyclical shows that the relationship has really grown. And to say the fact that he went to Abu Dhabi, the fact that he went to Iraq, which that was a very big moment, and he visited with the Ayatollah in his home. I know that was a tremendous crossing of a boundary that Pope Francis, entered into, and was received so warmly. Just that interaction on both ends, I think really showed the world that we can come together. We can come together in respect. Again, sadly, there were events in the past that were very tragic. But we are going to try our best, starting with our leaders, to go forward. I think about here in the United States, it's very interesting. I had the privilege of being on a board at a mosque here on Long Island. The Islamic Center of Long Island decided to found an interfaith center. And I was privileged to be one of the first members of a board that this mosque had established with the specific purpose of promoting interfaith harmony. This is a very large mosque with individuals from hailing from different countries, which is interesting. Many times mosques, they'll be associated with certain nationalities or cultural groups here in the United States who have immigrated on over. So you might have, a Saudi mosque, an Iraqi mosque, whatever the case may be. But there are international mosques now that are developing more and more. And I think when you come to a new country, there is fear. And I think at times I might have observed some of that fear, but I'm happy to say in some contexts, I have seen others, Catholics and others, really they've been welcoming, and they've tried their best to be there in support. But to see at times a sharing of gifts has been a tremendous privilege. One of the things that we do have nationally is we do have a national Catholic Muslim dialogue that meets regularly and tries to work on developing deeper bonds, not only in terms of working together for good causes, but also for understanding each other better. In fact, right now the dialogue is working on a text, Catholic guidelines for relations with Muslims, that's going to clarify some of the language that we were talking about before, and help people to understand each other's perspectives a little bit better. Our dialogue a few years ago, actually, between Catholics and Muslims, produced a text on the notion of revelation and how we understand God's revealing himself, through especially our sacred scriptures. And that was an insightful moment. So I think we're getting to know each other better as time goes on. And Pope Francis highlighted how a few years ago we observed the 800th anniversary of the visit of St. Francis of Assisi to the Sultan Malik Kamil, and that also was tremendous. Now to use that as a model. That was when Pope Francis was elected and he chose the name Francis. I'll be honest, my first thought was immediately to the Muslim community, saying this might very well be, his nod to, that's going to be a commitment of his, and I think he's fulfilled it very well.
Going back to my years of work together with the then Archbishop of Buenos Aires, as he likes even today to be called Father Bergoglio. I remember that we didn't analyze deeply the meaning of dialogue. We understood very quick each the other. Okay, both of our were born in Buenos Aires. Each one of us is a fan of one of the football teams. So we knew a great part, and we have a common language, and we knew a great part of the other, having been citizens of Buenos Aires, which means something special in itself, because there are very strange things in Buenos Aires, very interesting. Buenos Aires has to do a lot with the Italian character. We speak Spanish, but with an Italian sound. It sounds like Italian. But we went direct to the point. I remember how we sat together and we asked each the other, okay, what is our next step? What are we going to do in order to transmit the idea of dialogue? So from one day to the other, it was decided to record, for instance, programs for the Archbishop television channel. Is because he founded there a channel for the Archbishopcy of Buenos Aires. And so the idea was to touch the people, to be close to the people, to the simple people, to the person of the street. So it's a Spanish expression, the person of the street. And I suppose that this is the most important thing that we have to do with our dialogue, to involve the very, very simple people, even those who are not related to a church, or who, I remember that I used to meet people on the street that they approached to me and told me, oh, your program with Father Bergoglio is very good. It makes me good. I have no relationship with religion. My father is a Jew, my mother is a Christian, but really I am nothing. Let's say agnostic. I'm nothing. I cannot define myself. I don't go to the synagogue, neither to a church. Nothing. I cannot define myself as a religious people at all. But the program makes me good. I'm translating from Spanish. And I suppose I understood that makes me good because I learned that I have to be a dialogical person. Have you enough activities that in your agenda? I'm not mean your personal agenda, but the agenda of the people who are involved in dialogue, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and all the Catholic denominations, in order to approach the flock, the flock of our congregations. Flock, as we used to say in liturgical language.
Yeah, that is a very good question. And I will tell you, it is something I've been personally struggling with since I've taken on this role, almost 3 years ago now, and have engaged with others because our partners and our own people involved with dialogue are asking the same question. Because, we're now pushing 50 years of this agenda, since the council, actually almost 60, since Nostra Aetate. And the agenda. And the interesting thing is, especially say in our work with the USCCB, a lot of our work involves scholars. It involves things, particularly with Christians, trying to iron out our theological differences. And actually, in the midst of that, making great progress in terms of discovering, as you had said at the beginning of our time together, the distinction between language and belief. And sometimes we actually mean to say the same things, but we're articulating it in different ways. And we've done a lot of progress in that. I mean, we have many, many documents. We have many texts that are on beautiful bookshelves. But the question is being asked over and over again, what impact is this having on our people? What is the reception? Is this really making a difference in the day-to-day lives of Christians? Or is this just a select group of scholars who are coming together? So that is something that we are indeed thinking about and struggling with at this time. And, even one of the solutions that some people involved with our Reformed Christian Dialogue came up with was developing sort of a guide for congregations on the use of a text that we had just produced, to make it more accessible to people in the pews. But when we come to certain conclusions, when we make certain commitments, like to make sure that we are presenting each other accurately, are we doing that in our congregations? Are we making that clear to our clergy? Are we calling each other out? Sometimes I'll hear say from a Lutheran, I heard in the Catholic Church I visited because, maybe a relative had passed away or something, that Lutherans don't believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. But meanwhile, they do. And actually, it was the source of division for them, some conflict in the midst of Protestantism, where they stood very firm for that belief. And it was hurtful. So, the question becomes, when those sorts of things are going on, how much is it impacting the local community? And I think it's something we need to really look at and work on. And to be honest with you, I think one of the biggest hopes we have is the synod. There's going to be the synod on the synod that Pope Francis is encouraging the whole Catholic Church to enter into, where the priority is we need to listen to the voices we're not listening to. And that's not only within the Catholic Church, that's also very much so being encouraged for those outside of the Catholic Church as well. In fact, we received specific instructions from Rome to make sure our bishops know that it's a priority of the Holy Father to include these other voices in the conversations. But I believe that it's the first step to being aware of what the needs are, because you can have a wonderful scholarly work, but if it's not meeting the needs that are right there amongst the people, what are we doing? There are more crucial things perhaps that need to be looked at. As much as everything is important, I'm sure, there are crucial issues. And I think in this day and age, people are hungering. You mentioned so beautifully about what we call the nones, N-O-N-E-S, those who don't consider themselves affiliated with the religious tradition. And sometimes there are sad circumstances that involve that, perhaps a disenchantment with institutional religion because of a bad experience or something of that nature, because unfortunately we all of us, are frail human beings, and sometimes people make mistakes. But to reach out to them in fraternity, to show that religion does not have to be divisive. In fact, it can be unitive. It can bring us together. I believe we are speaking today because we have a common commitment to that which is good. And I believe that our faith traditions have brought us to that. To me, I'm so sorry, I'm going all over the place. But to me, for dialogue, especially interreligious dialogue, to work well, you want individuals who really, in a sense, embody in their beings their faith traditions. And I believe you do so in a radical way. And that is why, the dialogues you've entered into have been so fruitful, because you, by your person, embody what Judaism is about. And to get people together like that, representing their traditions and sharing who they are, without fear, with the sign of unity, as we're converging together on so many values. I think that can really give people hope. And that's what I think they're really longing for in this sad time. They're longing for hope. And we have the opportunity to provide it, coming rooted in our traditions.
It's our challenge. It's our duty to provide it. At the beginning of your answers, you mentioned, and afterwards you repeated, that in order to build a dialogue, we need a common language. And we know that in one of the dramas of the book of Genesis is what occurred at the end of the construction of the Tower of Babel. That as a punishment, God diversified the languages. And one could not understand the language of the other. In Hebrew is that one couldn't hear, but to hear in Hebrew, we have two verbs. One is from ear, leha'azin, ozen, and the other one is lishmoa. And lishmoa means to understand. When we say Shema Israel, means understand Israel, God is one, the famous verse. But there is, on the book of Zephaniah, the answer, the prophet Zephaniah, the answer that God gave to what occurred in Babel. And the prophet says, on the name of God, on behalf of God, and I am going to give you a pure language, a clear language. A clear language. My hope is, my understanding and hope is that in order to reach the redemption, we have to do something. God will help us to redeem ourselves from all our problems. But this is my understanding. All the time that we really are going to pave the way to work for that. And what we are doing is trying to find out this clear language, this very understandable language. And I suppose that this language begins or has as a base the language of your heart.
Yeah.
This is, I know that especially for the priests, the theology and how to resolve all the problems, the understanding of the letters of Paulus and then the meaning. This is a great work, a great work for the theologians and for the researchmen. But as I understood my work with Pope Francis, it's very important in order to get this clear language between Jews and Christians, and Catholics and Christians. But first and foremost, must be a language from heart.
Yeah.
We have to go to people. At the same time, to work, to come together, specialists from one side, from the other side, to work about the meaning of, as right now it's going to appear a book about the Pharisees, how to understand the word, how to understand the word Pharisees in the New Testament, and the whole conception of Pharisees, which was a problem in our languages, in our dialogues in the past. But this is very important. But what has this to do with the simple man or white woman from the street and his feelings toward Jews and vice versa?
Yeah.
And this was his priority, Francis' priority then, and it continues being right now. And this is what you expressed to all of us, as I understood, to work on the two fields. Thank you so much, Father Kedjierski. Your parents are from Poland?
My father's family is Polish. His parents came over from Poland, and you pronounced our name perfectly. Thank you for that.
I will explain you why. Because from which city were your grandparents in Poland?
There was actually a city that was named that bears their name. That's in southern Poland near the Czech border.
Kedjierski?
Yeah.
Kedjierski? Kedjierski.
Yep, that's it.
So my family name is also Polish because my parents came from Poland. Mm-hmm. And we have something in common. Really, the correct way to pronounce my family name is Skorka. But and there is a little village in Poland named Skorka. Skorka is a thin leather because skóra is leather in Polish, and Skorka the thin leather. My dear Father Kedjierski, and a little bit Polish, I know, a little bit. So, you speak Polish?
No, when my grandparents came over, we're Americans. Don't go on back there. So we lost it, sadly.
So in any cases, dziękuję in Polish. Thank you a lot for being so kind to have this special moment. It's not the intention of this recordings is not to have merely a recording or to perform merely an interview. The idea is to have, and I take this from my good friend, the Pope, is to have an encounter. Always you have to have an encounter with the other. Thank you a lot.
It was an honor. Thank you so much. I just want to mention one thing on your last comment. And that was when I was, when a priest is ordained, he always picks a passage of scripture to sort of be the passage that is put on his prayer cards. And it's sort of like his motto through his ministry. And the passage that I chose actually is from 1 Samuel 16 with this selection of King David, amongst his brothers. And it's that line, man judges by the outward appearance, but God judges by the heart. And, I think what you're saying is so, I've tried to live out in my own life, the idea, don't look at outward appearances, don't look at what the world considers to be great, but the one who seems to be overlooked is many times the one with the greatest wisdom. So that's sort of what I've tried to live by. So very much appreciate what you said.
This is the first, let us take a couple minutes more. We as human beings and as cultural human beings, we have two, let's say, two possibilities of attitudes. One possibility is to think, to analyze everything And the other attitude is to act with the best of your heart, with the best of your heart. On some opportunity, it was in a very sad moment of in Buenos Aires of Pope Francis when he lost his brother. So I went to the funeral house to express my condolences with him and family, and we began talking about all kinds of things, about life, about death, on those moments. So at certain moment, I don't remember how, I told him, may I ask you a question? And he said, yeah, yes, of course, what? Why did you choose me as the one to write a prologue about on a book which is an authorized biography of your life? Why did you do that? His immediate answer, without thinking, without hesitations, immediate, he told me, because so it came out from my heart. That is
beautiful. Wow.
It's beautiful.
That's amazing.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. My dear Father Kedjierski, thanks again for this encounter. I don't like, it is an interview, but I don't like to use the word interview. The challenge of these interviews, all this kind of interviews, must be an encounter. It is to teach others who are going to see us a message, to transmit them a message, to say them something. Thanks for the efforts.
This is a great pleasure. Thank you so much.